I've interviewed over 50 serial killers, but Bittaker and Norris were the first that ever gave me nightmares.
Hello, everyone. Hola, mis amigos. You're listening to Oh My God, Hi, Hijo de Dios. Hola. With me, George Lopez. Porque, ¿sabes qué? Let's do the show. Porque I got a lot of things to do. I gotta go to that dry cleaner ahí. My kid fell. Se pegó la cabeza. I gotta go get some Neosporin Paul.
You know what George is?
Oh, I'm sure he's around here somewhere.
What's his name? George?
Lopez.
George Lopez.
Oh my God!
OMG.
OMG! Hi!
Oh my God, hi.
Ever pull in the driveway after a trip to the grocery store? Only to realize you forgot that one key ingredient for dinner. Now you have options. Get the groceries you need or a backup meal for your favorite local restaurant delivered to with DoorDash.
For a limited time, for our listeners, 25% off and zero delivery fee on the first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code OMGHI. So download the DoorDash app and enter the code OMGHI for this special deal. Well, first of all,
hello.
Thank you for being on the podcast. This is right in my wheelhouse of always wanting to be a criminal, but never having the guts to be one.
I am such a fan, by the way.
Thank you very much. I mean, you know Mr. Gil, right? Gil Carrillo.
Yes. I do. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you very much.
She did her homework. I didn't know. It was her birthday.
When you have this many years, the average male lives to be, I think it's 80 years old. So I told my spouse this morning, I said, just look at it this way. I've only got about 8 more years, and we're good to go.
The only, to be considered old age as a Latino, 24.
Yeah.
You start to deteriorate.
That's for sure.
You get shorter. So how are you spending your? I mean, I can imagine that undertaking that. You want to introduce our guest? You always
yeah, of course. Joining us on the podcast today, criminologist Laura Brand wrote a lot about and a lot of investigative work into the Toolbox Killers, plural.
How is one of the? I mean, people use monsters a lot, but I don't know. Monsters kind of from the movies, right? This guy would not be considered a monster, I would think, him and his partner, right? They got to be really like the most evil.
I mean, they're monsters. I mean, when I first read I read a book in college about them, I thought, oh my God, they're demonic. I mean, for what they were doing. Yeah, I would say these are the two of the worst of the worst. I mean, especially hitting LA. Gil, I know you have a lot of experience with this.
I'd consider them a monster. They were torturing. They were doing things that normal people just don't do. Not even serial killers do. Torture.
Yeah.
Richard wasn't torturing.
Did they torture animals?
I don't know about animals. I don't know what they were doing to people.
But as kids, I think Jeffrey Dahmer, they say as a teenager or as a young kid would walk around with like a German Shepherd head on a stick or put it on somebody's fence. Back then you would think that would be demonic, but it's a start, I think, right? I think you kind of...
it definitely start. Yeah, definitely. They tortured the animals. Bittaker was taking out bunnies' teeth with pliers and that kind of stuff. Oh. So yeah, that is something you do see with these serial killers, the torture of the animals.
Then they were selling the feet as Lucky Rabbit's foot.
Oh, man.
Unlucky.
I could see a Mexican dentist doing that, pulling to get it started. They don't even have an office. They got like a van. People used to go get their teeth taken out at a van. They did. They had a dentist that had a van that you would go in there and sit in the back, and the dude would work on your teeth in the van. Oh. Like an Astro van. That's awful.
Well, it's funny because Bittaker was actually a dental hygienist right before he started all this. And but I could totally see why he wanted to go into that type of work with the dental. You like to see people in pain and that kind of stuff. And you're going to see that with sadists. They like to go into hospital work, unfortunately, police work sometimes. And, they love to see people in pain. They love to have that control over people.
There has been a lot of those where a nurse would like euthanize people, right? If they were suffering, but they were not going to die yet, a nurse would do that, and then
They've had a couple of them within the last 20 years that have been serial killers that were working in nursing homes and old folks' homes.
Yeah.
I think that. And are they made by? Does anybody come from a good background and become one of those a serial killer or a murderer or a sadist? From like
I've had a couple from good backgrounds actually, which were really surprising. You know, usually I find a lot of neglect. Neglect is like the biggest one I find, but I found a couple with good childhoods that have turned into serial killers. So this is kind of going back to that nature versus nurture of what's playing a factor into it. I think people are born a psychopath or antisocial personality, and they're also, nurture can actually, boost them into this kind of life of crime and serial killing. So it's kind of, I always describe it as like a perfect storm. You're looking at the storm clouds are coming in, all these factors are coming into play in part to turn them into what they are.
What about Bundy? What kind of childhood did he have? Because he wasn't a really bad guy, other than he liked to kill. Take that away. The judge said he'd have been a great attorney. Yeah. He was a college student, smart, intelligent, good looking. But I don't know what kind of background he had as a child.
His mom and dad looked like yeah.
Yeah.
They look like the all-American parents. His mom and dad. His mom had like a sweater. Theodore was a gentle like that. Like you're like this woman can't be real. Theodore was very. I don't know where he makes these things up, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, his mom. He thought his mom was his older sister for a couple of years. And his aunt actually remembers him putting knives into the beds when he was 3 years old. So there's always some type of like little sign from the family members, typically from a young age.
Man, that's got to be tough, man. You're like 3, putting knives in the bed, and I just think, did those guys ever say to you like, I didn't want to be this? Did they regret anything?
Oh, yeah. Bittaker said all the time, if I had one loving parent, if I just had one loving parent, I would have never become this monster that, I turned into. So his parents kind of, I don't know if you guys saw the documentary, his parents, gave him up, and he was adopted within the family. And the adopted parents, he says, were very neglectful. He never went to a birthday party, never had anything pretty much normal kids have. And he felt like a tenant with a room and board, just living with them his entire youth, pretty much.
That's pretty tough, huh?
Well, it is. I don't know. I don't know that I buy all that stuff. They're looking for an excuse that gives them a way out. This is why I am the way I am was because of the way I was treated. So he's got an avenue to place blame without having to accept blame for what he did on his own. Ramirez said, "Why do you think I did this? Why do you think I was this way?" He asked me that, and so he wasn't blaming it on anybody. And I just told him, hey, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a doctor making a lot more money than I am as a cop right here. I don't know why you're like that, nor do I really care. But
yeah. I get that question a lot from the serial killers. They will ask me, why am I this way? It's almost like they're trying to figure it out too in their own way. They're curious about it too. What turned them into this, person who wants to kill, who likes to kill, who's getting off on killing and loves to play with the cops, which Gil, you're very, very familiar with. But that's a question I get a ton from them.
So, Gil said that, remember when you went to your teacher over there and he said, what do you consider like a romantic evening? Like you go out and you go to have dinner and then you go to a movie and then you have dessert, maybe you make love, then that was their night. But them lighting a fire or waiting around and watching people suffer or be tortured was the way that they kind of got their...
That is sex to them. That derives their sexual deviance.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of... there's some people that have never been caught. There's no shortage of these guys. Why do you think that those guys felt as comfortable as they did with you, and did you see them like you could remove the part of the person and then talk to them? Because it did, I'm not trying to be sympathetic toward those guys, but they really kind of seemed like they needed like a friend, right? somebody that could listen to him. I think forget that they did what they did.
He always wanted that family sense, and I feel like in a sense I kind of gave that to him. You know, I'm going in there pregnant, and you know the father's out of the picture, and I'm kind of desperate. So for him, it was like, you know, here's a girl who needs my help and needs me, and you know, I think for him, you know, he was there when, you know, my son Romeo is kicking and stuff, so he kind of got like that family sense that I guess he never had, you know, with me and Romeo. And even after Romeo was born, you know, he was dying. He died about a couple months after Romeo was 1. But, you know, he was calling on his birthday, calling me during labor. I feel like he had this sense with Romeo. And it was weird, too, because, you know, Romeo was born blonde hair, blue eyes like me, but same as Lawrence Bittaker. And he said to me, he goes, I see myself in Romeo. And I was like, why do you see yourself in Romeo? And he goes, the single mother struggling, being born here. So I feel like this weird kind of, it's hard to explain, you know, this circumstances I was placed in, and then I'm working with this serial killer, and he's actually, you know, empathetic toward the situation of my son is in, and he's seeing himself with my son in a way, like he sees himself as my son, and seeing him with, like, you know, the single mother struggling type of dynamic. So, you know, there was a lot of factors that played into, I guess, him, you know, feeling the way he did and feeling like he had a sense of family and wanting to open up, you know. And aside from that, I had worked, it was 3 years before he even finally picked up the phone to call me. I had met with him in 2015 or 16. I went and met with him. He would not send me a visiting form. I actually had a struggle in San Quentin to get another serial killer to actually get a visiting form for him to sign off. And I sent it in, and I went to visit him. And that was our first meeting. And then we didn't talk. He didn't call, but he would still write a couple letters back. But he was saying in his letters back, I don't want to talk to you. But I just kept persisting. And it was finally after like 3 or 4 years that dam just broke. And he finally called, and he finally started opening up. And it was shortly after that he gave me, you know, the places where the bodies were up in San Gabriel Mountains, and, you know, where the buried evidence is, which is actually right where you guys are in Burbank.
You know that he probably thought about it every day of those 3 years, right? Like obsessed with it, and then finally, right? I think he would have.
Well, there's no doubt that he did, and there's no doubt that he was, at least in the beginning, working her, because she is like Disneyland to him. You're begging me, and then get into her, and now he gets sympathy from her, and now he's got a friend, and it works to his advantage as well.
Wow.
Yeah. It is a quid pro quo kind of like relationship between the two of you. You both are kind of going in for something. You're both getting something out of it. It's very, you know, Silence of the Lambs is.
It's totally Silence of the Lambs. Wow. And what about when he's describing stuff to you? You have to be like, I got to get the fuck out of here. Right? I mean, he's locked. He's in San Quentin, but I mean, as somebody's talking to you so casually, like I just saw a documentary, so casually and very kind of, you know.
I can't believe. I take my hat off. I'm very open. I told her the night that we did meet, she's a very young lady. To get to where she's at, to get the amount of time that she had with him, I mean, it takes people a full career before you get there. I mean, and I was exposed to it an awful lot, but it took me years and years and years before I felt comfortable talking to somebody like that.
I appreciate that.
It's really phenomenal that she got in that early.
And you know, as far as you know, serial killers are, where would they be on the list? They're not as high. They should be, because I think they're the most demonic, sadistic, fucking guy. And you know, that's my side job. You know.
Well, and maybe too, Laura, for the audience, you want to explain a little bit of who the Toolbox Killers are, what they did, just for some context too.
Yeah, so the urban legend of where the van, of like that murder van, the white van or whatever, that actually comes from Bittaker and Norris. They were trolling up and down, you know, South Bay in Los Angeles, picking up girls, teenage girls, hitchhiking. Some were actually abducted straight into the van. They pulled them right in. The first victim, Cindy, was walking home from church, and they threw her right in the van, and they drove them up to San Gabriel Mountains. Now, this is where they tortured and raped them, some for even days, and until they finally killed them. And they're known for putting the ice pick into the victim's ear. And, you know, it didn't kill them instantly. and they would actually have to take it out and sew it to the other ear. They would also strangle them on top of that. This is after hours of torture. And, I think one of the reasons they're not as well known is something that I've been hit back with writing the book now. And I've been talking to an agent and some other people, production companies in Hollywood. A big thing, especially daytime TV, when I was supposed to go on daytime to promote the show, this case is so dark, a lot of people don't want to touch it. So this is why kind of the reasons it hasn't been as a Ted Bundy or a Jeffrey Dahmer is networks get scared, books get scared, of wanting to cover this case. But it is an important case that we need to cover. I mean, it sheds a lot of light on how we can be hypervigilant for teenage girls, especially. These guys were going onto the beach and actually giving, forms out saying, we're model scouts, we're directors, we'll get you into Hollywood, we'll do this. And these girls are just signing over, their addresses, social security numbers to these predators. So it's kind of like, it really is an important case that people need to, hear about just for their own safety, hypervigilance, but also, these girls need to be remembered too. And 2 of the girls are still up in San Gabriel Mountains as well.
Oh, wow.
It is a very dark case, and I've actually heard one of the tapes that Laura didn't have access to, and nobody has access. And when I heard it, because I was working Homicide Bureau at the time, and the investigators were friends of mine, but I listened to it, and it is so blood-curdling. I tried to make it, I wanted it mandatory for every new homicide investigator to come into the Bureau to sit down and listen to it so they could hear that this is not a place of glory or nothing. This is real. This is not a game. You have to be prepared for this stuff if you're going to work up here.
And also, people that glorify that, I don't have better things to do than worry about how many serial killers are out there or finding out about them. But I just think, there's still, even though social media, and I think you can agree that people are still as naive regarding that kind of stuff as they were before that kind of stuff, where guy could just walk up to you, and because he looks like the kind of person that you would assume was friendly, that you would start engaging in conversation. Is that kind of true? Yeah.
100%. I think especially now in this day and age where everybody wants to be like an Instagram model or star or TikTok or whatever, and Bittaker at the time, he was making crazy money. I mean, he was making $100,000. This is back in 1979. Wow. So he was waving money around. And especially, I think when young girls are getting, approached by an older man waving money around, they're thinking he's a big shot. And the thing is, so can a predator do that? And then we have stuff like, 50 Shades of Grey, where, this like young, handsome guy comes waving money around, and they turn into a love story. But the fact of the matter is it turns into a Criminal Minds episode very, very quickly.
If I'd only had money to wave around, I could have had a different lifestyle.
I had money to wave around, and I turned it into horror. But yeah. And how did those guys? How did they meet again? The two toolbox. How did they?
They
meet?
met in prison up in San Luis Obispo. They met, and so Bittaker was working in a wood shop, and Norris actually made jewelry. That was like what he loved to do, was make jewelry, and he taught Bittaker how to make jewelry. So it was actually a group of them. It was a group of these guys in prison, and they would talk about their sexual fantasies that were all the same about, kidnapping and torturing and killing young women. So it actually turned into a group of them. It wasn't even just Bittaker and Norris. So they were actually sending in pictures of the victims back into their friend Richard Shootman back at San Luis Obispo. So, and they were just sending him messages just by picture saying, hey, we've gone through with the plan that we planned, in prison. And then a lot of them actually got out, and they all moved to Los Angeles County. And that's when Joe Jackson was a friend of them. He was actually prowling with them to go out on the rapes, who you see in the show. And Jackson was the one who actually went to, authorities and said, these guys are actually killing them. He was only into it for the rapes, not for the killing. So he actually went back. But it's pretty scary, because it was kind of like, it was like this group of these sexual deviants all got together, in prison and outside of prison as well.
I mean, Rodney Alcala did it, but he did it by himself.
Yes.
As a good-looking dude, young. And, when he was on the Dating Game, Rodney Alcala, and he won, and the woman like talked to him, and she was like, "This dude is creeping me out," and didn't go on the date with him.
Yep. And fun fact about him as well, he was actually hunting at Knott's Berry Farm, which is also a hunting ground that Bittaker and Norris used the same month they were there, in June of 1979. Wow. So you got to think, 3 serial killers are both using the same hunting ground back in 1979. I mean, these serial killers back then were like on top of each other in Los Angeles.
Man. And why did they choose Knott's Berry Farm?
Well, Knott's Berry Farm, young girls, teenage girls, that's where they go to hang out. They're away from their parents. They tell their parents we're going to go hang out at this, amusement park. All teenagers, they just go to amusement parks, hang out. Same with the beach.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than Disneyland, and back then we didn't have Magic Mountain, so it's either Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm.
Knott's Berry.
You think that they did Alpine Village too? Because that's cheaper than Knott's Berry Farm. Remember, it's still over there, Alpine Village. Yeah. And how is the book coming along?
It's good. I just got an agent on, and we're getting ready to, go to publishers. So it's working. It's going to be a long one. I'm already at like 100 and almost 30,000 words at this point. So it's going to be a big one. But, it's a huge piece. We had 5 police departments covering it. And then we had Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, which Gil was very close to one of the lead investigators over there, Dennis. So we have, it's a massive case. And then on top of this massive case and the backstory I have to write about my interviews and, the years I spent working with Bittaker and Norris too. So it's going to be a long one.
How did you find your way to crime?
Me? Honestly, Nancy Drew when I was a little girl.
Classic.
My dad would sit there and read Nancy Drew to me, and I became obsessed. I wanted to be Nancy Drew. I wanted to kind of go out there and solve mysteries and that kind of stuff. And then it led me to, true crime. It was a young girl. And then I was reading, serial killer books, FBI profiler books in high school. And then I went to school for forensic psychology. And it was a professor who told me, start doing your own study and start, interviewing these serial killers on your own. And I did. I took it and ran with it. And that's what led me actually to Bittaker, Norris, and San Quentin.
Man, that's...
I probably, in all likelihood, because of her youth, because of her lack of experience and the way she went about it, I probably wouldn't have spent a lot of time with her before. Because it would have been, in my eyes, somebody who did it for a living and looking at this is a fantasy, she really doesn't know what she's doing. Now, after the fact, now knowing her background, knowing what she did, now it was very exciting. It was very surprising for me when I met with her, sat down. And we met at her request. She wanted to meet with me, so we went, gave her the time. And I'm fascinated by her story and how far she's gone at this young age. She's got a big career ahead of her.
Thank you. It's a wild story. I mean, I really started out from nothing, and I've just built this study and broke this serial killer at such a young age. This sadistic serial killer at such a young age, and now I've done this documentary, have this book coming out. So it's been a whirlwind. So I've been looking up to people like Gil, to help mentor me through this kind of wild journey of serial killers and how to deal with them and work with them and, kind of uncover what's never been uncovered, like the missing victims and the buried evidence kind of stuff.
Yeah, because, all of their families deserve, everybody deserves to have the finality of at least knowing what happened, right? I mean, yeah. It's got to be tough
100%.
For everyone.
I'm curious. Throughout my career, I learned how to divorce myself from personal feelings, from what I had to do, what I was seeing, what I was working, and divorce myself. And it's never bothered me. Other than children bothered me. I didn't like working around kids. Has any of this, your studies, your work, what you've done, your time with Bittaker, has it ever given you nightmares? Have you ever thought about what they've done, the torture, the murders, and everything you've studied?
I wrote a chapter. Yeah, I just wrote a chapter. I had many nightmares. It was so I've interviewed over 50 serial killers, but Bittaker and Norris were the first that ever gave me nightmares. I think it's because, he also gave me the police discovery. So I'm, going back and reading, the detective notes, the court transcripts. And I just dug so deep into the case, I started having nightmares. Ironically, I started having the same nightmares as the district attorney, Stephen Kay. And the nightmares were that I would be running up San Gabriel along those dirt roads, the fire roads, and I would hear the screams of the girls, and I'd get to the van and they would open the door and the dead body would drop out. It would be one of the girls, and they would hop out and laugh and say, "You didn't make it in time, Laura." Wow. And mine were a little more personalized because I actually had a best friend who was murdered. So Bittaker and Norris would jump out and talking to me like I would talk to them on the phone, and they would say, you couldn't save them, you couldn't even save your best friend. So that was a recurring nightmare that I've been having, and a couple others. But yeah, this was the first case that actually gave me, I guess, what you would call like post-traumatic stress from the case, or just going too deep into a case. Is the nightmares definitely started with Bittaker and Norris.
Yeah, I would say, and that's. I mean, it's so specific to your own, mind and memories, and combination with these guys. That's tough.
Yeah.
Because it's into.
There was one nightmare where I actually woke up from the nightmare and I turned over my bed and it was Bittaker laying next to me in the bed, smiling. And I said, I was calm, but I said, "You're not allowed to be here." And he goes, "Where is my Laura?" And I said, "My subconscious." And that's when I woke up. Wow. But it was like I even knew that he had invaded my subconscious, like even in my dream state.
That's probably a natural reaction. Wake up next to her and he's smiling at her.
Yeah.
That never happens to me. Nobody ever wakes up next to me and they're smiling. They're wide awake. Everybody that wakes up next to me is, when I wake up, they're already awake. Like, how the fuck did I get out of here?
Why not?
Even Chihuahuas, like I would have my dog sleep with me in the middle of the night. They'd do the walk of shame out of there. Even they couldn't hang out the whole night.
You're not supposed to be here.
I'm not supposed to.
What do you want to eat tonight? Maybe you want a home-cooked favorite meal, but don't feel like going to the store, or you want something exciting and new, but it would be great to stay in tonight. DoorDash connects you with everything you want, whenever and however you want it. It's time to get back out there, but if you're not quite ready for a full-blown adventure, there's still ways to explore the world from the comfort of your home. With DoorDash, you don't need to travel far to experience something new.
Get the DoorDash look. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app. That's 25% up to a $10 value and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Don't forget, that's OMGHI for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Subject to change and terms apply. And I even wrote a song, The DoorDash Look, available at Bullock's. In the serial killer, like the idea, like, was another question. But I think Netflix, in order to make Ted Bundy more appealing, left out a lot of the horrific details of his crimes in order to make him almost like a star, which is, I think, is incredibly wrong. If you look at how bad these guys are, that you want to maybe sugarcoat them to make them more appealing so that people can become enamored with them and kind of, just look at them. It's not studying them. They're kind of entertained by them. We shouldn't be entertained by that.
Right. And I think, even with the documentary of the Toolbox Killer, we left out pretty much all of the torture in the series. I mean, it really does not go into anything that they really actually did to the girls. It's kind of just saying like an overview of what happened.
And do they hate women like that because are they females, women, their mom, or a teacher, or where is that hate? Like where does that come from?
Perhaps
fucking
rejection.
Rejection.
Yeah.
Now,
they were rejected by women. Richard was rejected when he was a kid. So in his youth, I won't say he's a kid, but rejection. Now it's time to get back, get even.
Yeah. And it's always, well, I think, in as far as relationships in somebody's life, the mother is the, it's your mom. It's like the person that you love unconditionally. If she's not there, or I mean, listen, man. I mean, my mom was out there, but I never thought my mom was my sister. So I would think she acted like she was my sister, very mature. But I think when you're lied to a kid and tell them that that's their older sister and it's their mom,
it messes you up. Yeah, totally. It definitely does.
You know, the Green River Killer, I think his mom would like wear a robe and it was open.
She would like dress up in like 90s and stuff in front of him, and very sexualized in front of him.
There's a writer. They did the movie. I don't remember. It was L.A. Confidential. He's a famous writer.
Yeah, who is that guy?
See if I can grab him. James Ellroy?
James Ellroy.
There we go.
He had, you listen to his books on tape, he did one of his books, and although he was never a killer, and this was his fantasy, he came to our bureau years after his mother had been murdered, and she was loose. And yet he talks in his book about how sometimes he had fantasies about his own mother. You know, she used to bring drunks down there and several men down the house, and he could still smell her. And it was in his books. And all of his material is a throwback to the 40s. You know, the way he talks, the way he acts. It's all set in that time period.
Well, I'm going to tell you guys a couple of things that, I mean, I watch serial killer stuff. A lot of the time that they were identifying where these guys could have started, I had 4 of the 5 things happen to those guys that they became serial killers. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, that's, whoa, all right. I don't have any pictures of me as a baby. And I remember my mom being with men and they're trying to like keep me out of the room, and I knew. And I mean, that's fucking hard, man, for any kid, boy, girl, whatever. I mean, your childhood isn't gonna be great, but you don't want it to be like that for anybody. For a girl, her identification of a man, what she looks for in a man, for, you know, somebody that's a kid that, you know, that thing is, you're looking for something in somebody that is not looking for it in you. And it's tough to grow up like that. So, you know, a lot of these guys, like you interviewed a lot, and they all don't become that, but they become, you know, that guy in the store that, you know, is fucking an asshole 24 hours a day. And you're like, hey, man, you really shouldn't probably be in customer service if, you know, you can't get out of your own way. I mean, you never really thought about having an identity at work that was different than your identity at home. And I think these guys, they live in a area that they create these false personalities, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They live in a world of, you know, fantasy, you know. You know, I have a theory, especially with what I'm seeing with the killers, interviewing them, you know, especially with ones that have trouble with the mothers, you know, growing up, or the mothers have abandoned them, which I see a lot of. And then you have the first rejection, which is normal for every kid to go through, whether you're male or female. We all have our first rejection. We have our first heartbreak. Very normal. Except when you have a kid who now has probably, you know, an underlying antisocial personality coupled with now an abandonment of a mother, and now he's getting rejected from his first heartbreak, you know, this is where the perfect storm is kind of brewing. So I think a lot of times when I see these killers, they kind of take captive of their victims. You know, it doesn't even have to be they're not in a cabin in the woods, but maybe even for the night, like you would do with Richard Ramirez, you know, just even in the mountains with what Bittaker and Norris said, they're taking these girls hostage, captive, but they're making them play into their own fantasy. And this is why I think what's happened is from this upbringing, from their, you know, antisocial personality, is now they have this false illusion, this false fantasy that they have to keep a woman hostage to feel any type of emotion or love that they're trying to gain. And even though it's a false sense of love or, emotion from them, this is a fantasy that they're playing into their minds where they're trying to capture that. They're trying to capture this love or emotion that they've lacked their entire lives.
Do they ever disconnect from that? Do they ever disconnect, and can they maybe be a little bit more down the middle for like 5 years and then go back to it? Or you think they're always a bit like that?
You mean do they go through a cooling off period where they try to get on the straight? Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of examples. You look at, the Green River Killer, which you mentioned, he got married and he was kind of off for a couple of years. You look at BTK.
BTK was off for
cooling off period for a couple of years. A lot of them go through this cooling off period. And maybe it's because they're capturing something that they've been searching for, or maybe, it could be for, a lot of different reasons. Serial killers go through different stages as they kill, and they go through a very depression period right after the killing, and then they work back up to chasing the dragon, almost like a drug addict type of way, where they, need to capture that back. And, nothing's ever going to capture that fantasy. Nothing. Any fantasy in real life, what any person has, nothing is ever going to match up to that fantasy that they're chasing. And same with the serial killers who want to believe that, this is going to be a reality, what they're picturing in their mind, with the killing, with the torture, with the rape. Wanting that, whatever they're searching for. Some of them are searching for that sense of, love that they've gotten, rejected from their mother, from their first rejection. They're searching for it. They're never going to find that, of course, with a victim that they're searching for.
Like in the perfect, in Bittaker's perfect world, what do you think he would have wanted to be if he had?
He talks to me about, his mother and the ex-girlfriend so much. And I actually tracked down this high school girlfriend, almost 50 years later. No, 60 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. So they dated in high school, and I found him, right after he died. So it was 2019, 2020. I finally tracked her down. And, when I talked to her, I said, he talked about you until the day he died. And she was like, we were just like high school kids that were getting, soda. And he would drive me up to these mountains, which I found out were San Gabriel Mountains. And she was like, it was just like a fling, like a high school boyfriend, nothing serious. And I was like, oh, wow. Because, Bittaker was talking to her like, this is my one true love, my first love. And she's just like, just a high school fling. So it was really telling when I finally got to talk to her. And she was really embarrassed. She had actually a stack of newspapers of Bittaker and the crime. She had hidden under her bed, and she was so scared her children were going to find them. She ended up throwing them out. But I remember just talking to her, and she was just like, I had no idea. And I was like, listen, he wasn't a serial killer, when you were dating him, of course. But, it's amazing seeing how much guilt she held on to all these years of her high school boyfriend who went on to become a serial killer from her rejection from him.
Wow.
Damn, those guys.
What did she look like?
Blonde hair, blue eyes. And she wore a cross in Catholic school.
But he wasn't an attractive guy, right? I mean, he was thin, and he wasn't unappealing, right? I mean,
well, according to Hollywood, he's attractive, which I didn't necessarily know. Hollywood has deemed Bittaker North considerably attractive. I think that's why they've made it onto TV. But when I look at them, when I see the pictures of them next to each other, all I see is these 70s B-rated porn stars when I see the picture of them next to each other.
It's funny how that just the single mustache, you're one of the few guys that can pull it off, where that became like the porn stash, like a guy with a mustache.
It's a porn stash, yeah.
And you could be like a good-looking dude, and girls will see you and they'll go, "What do you think of that guy? The guy with the porn stash?" And you're like, "Man, that got
game over."
I had to make money on the side somewhere. I wasn't getting paid enough for the cop.
Yeah, I think but charm goes a long way, I think, in fooling people. If you want to be a good salesman, right? What are the commonalities that those guys have that they're bullshitters? I think
they're master manipulators.
Yeah.
That's what they were good at.
Masterful at what they do.
It's easy to lie to people if you just tell them something they want to hear. It really is.
You know that, and it sounds simple, doesn't it?
Yeah. they've all told me, I look at a human and I think, what do they want? That's the first question they ask themselves is, what does that human want? And they can almost they're better than the FBI profilers. They know how to look at a person and be like, this is what that person is seeking. Wow. So they'll know if that person wants drugs, if that person wants money, if that person is looking for love. They pry on love and attention. And that's a basic human thing that everybody kind of wants. And they pry on that like no other. So, they know exactly what to say, what to do, what you want to hear. So, I mean, when people are like, oh, I could never be a victim, I was like, no, everybody can be a victim, because these guys are looking at a specific human being and they know exactly what you want. They're looking at you and trying to figure out exactly what you want to hear, what you want. And they're trying to give it to you, to lure you in as a victim.
See, in other words, if some gorgeous, sexy young lady wanted me, she'd just come up and say, hey, you want another taco? And that would be it.
They would come up to me and say, you want to be left alone? Yes. How old is your son now, Romeo? He's
3.
I think he was kicking in there because I think even he knew I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom's talking to this dude. I gotta get I'm not even supposed to be born yet, but I'm ready to get the hell out of here.
Bad vibes.
He just had a recent birthday, didn't he?
He did, yeah. It was his 3rd birthday. But yeah, he actually was in the womb at San Quentin. So he actually talked to Lawrence Bittaker, Wayne Adams Ford, and Douglas Clark. He talked to. So this kid has actually gone up against 3 serial killers before he even was birthed.
What did you think when you went to San Quentin? What was when you first started to go there?
It was my first prison experience. You go through college and you hear about prison and the classes and kind of that kind of stuff, but nothing prepares you for the field, which Gil will tell you, nothing could ever prepare you for the field. But you get there and it's petrifying. You're going not only into a prison, you're going on to death row, which is a whole different ball game. And I was petrified. And you're going through the steel doors, you're going through security check, and then you get inside and you find out that it's not like you see on the movies. It's not a phone with the glass where you're speaking on the phone. It's not like that. You actually go into a cage, a tiny little cage, like a dog's kennel style cage, in with them, and they are uncuffed, unchained, and you're just in this cage with them. Yeah,
that's terrifying.
I just can't imagine what it would be like thinking. I didn't like going to San Quentin, and I don't know if they're still doing it. Back then, they used to sign a waiver, no hostage clause. They're not going to negotiate for you. Get down the ground or get your back up against the wall because they're going to start shooting. They're not going to negotiate for you. What it would be like for a lady to go in there, and especially, make no ifs, ands, or buts about it, she's a very attractive lady. So blonde-haired, blue-eyed, with all the accoutrements going in there with all those men that have very little to lose by acting out. So that had to be a frightening experience. Did they have more than one guard with you escorting you around?
No, there's only, probably the same as you had, one guard on the outside, one guard on the inside of the cages. And, they're patrolling, but they're patrolling, I think it's 14 cages in the U shape. I'm not sure exactly how you had to go in with Richard. But that's pretty much what it is, the 2 guards on the inside, outside. And yeah, you have to sign the waiver because, of course, if a riot breaks out, they're not coming for you. You're on your own.
I just want to clarify. So I never went up there to see Richard, not San Quentin. I went up to San Francisco to see him in court, but I've never been up to San Quentin to see Richard. I've gone there on other cases, so it wasn't as scrutinized as death row is. So I didn't have to go through that.
Death row.
I've heard stories about Richard, how crazy he was in the visiting room.
I've heard stories as well by guards that work there and other retired cops that have been up there.
Yeah.
And the inmates didn't like him. He was exposing himself to other visitors there. And him and this guy, Peterson, got into a pretty hectic altercation where there was actually one was trying to kill the other guy and a lot of stuff that went on. I didn't worry about it. Not my problem anymore. Deal with local stuff down here, but he was supposed to be nasty. I didn't care.
Yeah, I've heard the same. Yeah, it can get pretty wild in those visiting rooms, from what I've heard.
I don't
I only
think
had the alarm go off once when I was there.
shit. And what did you think of that?
It's terrifying. You hear the alarm going off and it's stop all movement, something's going down, so they have to stop everything. You can't move, you can't do anything. The alarm's going off, something's going on.
First thing
you
you
don't
say
know
is-
what's going on.
First thing you say is, Romeo, hide. Don't say anything.
Shit,
Yikes, dude.
I mean, and you had an interest in it. It never deterred you, huh? It never made you not want to go.
No, it's always felt almost like a mission, like this is what I've meant to do since I was a kid. So it was just always felt like, this is what I was meant to do. And for some reason, something kept bringing me back to Bittaker. He was the most challenging of the serial killers I had to deal with. And I'm like, why am I harping on one that's so challenging when I have a ton of others I could be, interviewing for study? Why am I keeping back to this challenging one? And something kept bring me back to him, kept trying. And, it was finally when he gave everything up. It was almost like an aha moment where I was like, okay, this is why I was meant to keep going back to this one and keep trying him like so hard.
Yeah, I think that's that's the one.
Perseverance.
The toughest. What are some of the who are some of the other guys you talk to or people that you talk to?
Well, during the time I was pregnant, I did Wayne Adam Ford and Douglas Clark. Douglas is the Sunset Slayer in Los Angeles. So he was killing girls, along the sunset. He had a partner as well, but he had a female partner. There was a lot of decapitation with their case. Wayne Adam Ford was a truck driver, killer in California. He actually was a rare one because he actually turned himself into the police, and he turned himself in with a human breast in his pocket in his Ziploc bag.
Oh my God.
Did you hear about that?
No.
Man,
That's the first time I hear about it.
wow.
When did that occur?
It was in the 90s. Yeah, it made national news at the time.
Do you know what part of California that occurred?
It was northern.
Northern now.
Let's see. I looked up the Wikipedia page. So he turned himself in November 1998 in Humboldt County Sheriff's Department in Eureka, California.
There's all that weed up there they were growing in Humboldt County.
I think that would have chilled him out. Well, see, yeah. I mean,
Yikes.
what a world
What's
we
up?
live in. man.
What's up? You want a chichi? Here.
Yeah, right. You don't walk around with those hanging around. I mean, man, that's really something. I don't know, man.
Especially because the inside of a breast is all fat. I don't know why somebody want to hold on to that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of questions with this one.
Yeah, what's that
Yeah.
guy's name? What was that?
That's Wayne Adam Ford.
Maybe we can get him on a
He
guest.
smiled in his.
See,
he's still alive.
Yeah, still alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
turn himself
very close
in.
to
Yeah,
someone.
you are.
Yeah. Yeah. His son was only a young kid when this was happening, but we reconnected. I went out to visit him, and he's a really good kid. And he has a lot of questions about his father. So, I've kind of been like that liaison between him and his dad happening.
Wow.
What does the dad feel about his family?
He really wants to, connect with his son, kind of, answer these questions for him. I can't even imagine, being the son of a serial killer and the questions you probably have, of like, are these traits passed on? Am I, gonna, embody these? I can't even imagine. I was just watching, I don't know if you guys watched Dexter. I was just watching the latest episode, and I was like, Dexter's son just, got some of the traits. So I can imagine, anybody who has that as a parent, you probably have those questions that, most of us don't have, as a kid.
Wow.
I mean, is there forgiveness, or can you think his son can live a normal life? What would consider normal? But
Yeah, he's leading a really good life. He has a girlfriend now he's in love with, and they have a kid together, and he's doing really well. And, I've talked to a lot of serial killers' kids, and they're doing pretty well. They're doing, working through, having that stigma attached to them. Most of them kind of detach from it, but they lead very normal lives themselves.
what do you make of the fascination of people with serial killers, like from the inside? Like we're looking at the inside, but you're on the inside.
Yeah. Personally, I think a lot of people who like true crime, I don't find it. A lot of people want to put into like a group of like their groupies, which I don't believe at all. I think that the reason we all like serial killers, the reason all of us now are talking today, is because of a primal instinct. You know, we are primal beings. We are animals at the end of the day, and the thing is, somebody, you know. Our species, which is a serial killer, they threaten our species because they are actually killing off human beings, and that actually goes against, you know, why we're here on Earth, to reproduce. So this is kind of why we are, you know, inclined to learn about them, is because we want to know about our predators that are, you know, threatening us. You know, you look at Shark Week, we have a huge thing in Shark Week on Discovery Channel that everybody turns in for. It's because it's, you know, a predator that is, you know, could kill us. So anytime there is a predator that is, you know, coming for us or that kind of thing, it's always going to, you know, give us an inclination to learn about them and a fascination. And, you know, it's almost like hypervigilance. We want to learn about that predator as much as we can so we can, you know, fight against it.
And then certainly social media has got to be driving it. You know, now you have the ability, which they didn't have. There wasn't the coverage in the Toolbox Killers. Now you have social media driving things and driving this true crime and people that are involved in it, and they love telling stories with each other and sharing their thoughts.
Yeah, I think,
it's social norm completely. You know, true.
but also I think that people can set themselves up more to be victims of somebody that's manipulating them through DMs. I mean, you know, there was a guy that was pretending to be a record producer or pretending to be a woman, and guys were sending them money. I mean, you know, it's manipulation, I think, in that.
Oh, yeah.
That people can be easily manipulated or want to be in a relationship so bad that they go against their instincts, I think is.
Anybody looking or starving for attention, we did a videotape on an old gangster. His name was Stomper. He used to be from Grape Street, Watts. And he says gang members associate with each other because it's like forming their own family. It's their own group. Mm-hmm. They protect each other. They love each other. They give what they couldn't get from their own families. So now they're together. So now you have a group of people that are into true crime, and now you have the social ability to exchange that, where people would normally sit there and say, oh, you're crazy, you're following this shit. Now you got a group of people that are into it. We don't need those outsiders. We got us.
Right.
Let's work it hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gangs, cults, same thing. You know, they're getting that same sense.
Is a cult leader, are they manipulators, or do they really believe in what they're saying?
Oh, I believe they're master manipulator. Reverend Jim Jones.
Yeah.
You know, got everybody to drink the punch. You know, and he got everybody to move out of there. And I have a friend whose wife actually left him to go over there.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And manipulator. You know, they're promising something that nobody else will do for them.
Mm-hmm. There you go. That's well said. They're promising something that somebody won't do for them.
Yeah. I was crazy story. I actually joined a cult. Not to join a cult, but I was a death row inmate out of San Quentin, paid $3,000 for me to go into what's called a leadership university, but it was cult. And I did it basically for research. So I actually went through the course, and it was a 100-day course, and it was very cultish. And it just happened to be from someone in San Quentin's death row that actually paid for me to go through it. And I learned a lot from it. And I would definitely say it's very manipulative. It's more for, you know, greed for money from the organization. And then I think there are leaders that it's definitely all master manipulators, but I think there are some that actually believe that they are, you know, this, you know, prophet or Messiah, you know, come down to earth, but it's all feeding their ego at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Why did Jim Jones want to go to Guyana?
I have no idea.
Because he could create a kind of like a village there that they would grow their own food, that I guess he wouldn't be interfered with by authorities, or I think that
Yeah, isolation from all the people and their families in a foreign country. You know,
I looked it up on Wikipedia.
there's not a lot of regulations.
They settled on Guyana as a favorable location, citing its recent revolution and socialist government, as well as the favorable reaction Jones had received when he traveled there in 1963.
That was an eye-opening time for America or the world to see what a cult leader could do by manipulating people. I mean, remember that the senator or congressman got shot.
Yeah, when they were trying to get away from there, the cameraman that was with them that took the footage of them actually getting shot, he had been with us just a little time before that. He rode around with my partner and myself for 2 weeks with Geraldo Rivera doing a thing for Nightline. And he was in my car, and he left us, and then he went to Guyana, and last footage was him getting killed.
Man, unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And, you know, I mean, you know, people stay, you know, if you're of a certain amount of means, you know, then you'd stay like in a, you know, dumpy hotel or a motel, and, you know, you're going to be around those people. Maybe your circumstances are you're not, you know, you don't have a lot of money, but you're in a more dangerous situation.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
For the one that I was in, we had to raise $5,000 for charity, which is a ton of money. And we had a week's time to raise it. And then we also had to enroll 5 people into it. And that's $3,000 a person.
Wow.
And this is so, you know, you're paying also for the travel cost, the class cost. So, I mean, you're talking crazy amount of money in a very short period of time that you're handing over.
how did you do that?
I was lucky because, you know, I was, you know, the class is paid for. I was able to skate by with the raising of the money, just by family and friends just helping me out. And then when it came time where I had to enroll the 5 family members of friends, I had called the death row inmate and I had said, you got me into this, you're getting me out of this.
Wow.
So it was him to, you know, get the recruits. And that's how I kind of survived. But the rest of the people had to enroll 5 people for $3,000 a pop. And I had just pretty much just said to the death row inmate, you got me into this, you're getting me out of this. It's on you to do my recruits, pretty much.
Wow. That's crazy.
You said to him, it's on you to do my, it's on you to find my recruits.
She's got a lot of intestinal fortitude for this young age.
Yeah, you really do. You don't fuck around either. That's pretty good.
Well, he got me into the situation. He's getting me out of the situation.
I don't think a lot of people would do that. I think, it's not trying to the right way that it may be more productive to be a female to understand. You know what I'm saying? To understand that the mind of somebody like that than a male. Is it gender related? That
I don't know that it's gender related. Just that thing that we've talked about before, to have an infinite amount of understanding as to why they're doing what they're doing, and that's not gender related. You just have to have understanding to know why they're doing it. Don't condone it.
Yeah,
just
I don't
understand
think it's gender related. I think though the men are more inclined to, open up to a female. They look at, this goes back to the mother issue too. I think they're more likely to open up to a female just because they feel safer. They feel like women are more empathetic than a male. But I think males have strong points with getting them to open up too. I think it's a twofold type of deal as well.
Yeah. So when somebody were any of those guys closed off, like really closed off, or were they communicating with you? Somebody doesn't want to talk, or they say, I don't want to talk about that, or...
Bittaker was closed off. Bittaker was like the worst of the worst for 3 years. I mean, he would just, anything I tried, I went to visit, even sending him the letters, he would write back and he'd be like, do you understand English? Because I kept writing and he was saying, stop writing. So he'd be like, do you understand English, little girl? Like kind of, very degrading towards, because, I was so persistent. I just would not stop writing him. But I just kept trying, and but he was the one who stone cold me. He just did not want to talk to me, and finally it was just like a dam breaking when I finally got to him.
What was it that broke him, you think?
Yeah, I was just wondering that.
I think, I kind of tricked him because, when I became pregnant and I only had, $1,500 in my bank account, and I'd been kicked out by my ex, and he had said, you're on your own. So I just lost a job. The company I was working went into bankruptcy. So I said, I'm about to be a mom. I'm 6 months pregnant at this point. And I said, I'm going to go to San Quentin and spend this money and do this round of interviews and finish, this study that I've been working on for 5 years. I'm going to finish it. At least, I'm going to work towards something, finish something for my son. So I had contacted Wayne Adam Ford and Douglas Clark, and I said, I'm coming and I'm going to finish the study and I'm going to interview you guys and I want to do a book on it. And they're like, okay. And I said, I want you to tell Lawrence Bittaker that I'm coming and that I'm pregnant. And if he wants me to visit with him, that he has to call me himself. And it was kind of like a shot in the dark. I didn't think he would actually do it. And then sudden, I get the call from San Quentin, and I pick it up and I hear, you have a call from Lawrence Bittaker. Okay. And I just remember stunned that this is the first time after 3 years, and I had already visited with him. He's calling me and he's like, I hear you're pregnant and you're coming out. And I was like, I am. And I just kept him on the phone, kept asking questions after questions, trying to build a rapport on the phone. I wanted him to be comfortable to call me whenever he wanted to and just talk. And it wouldn't be like an awkward silence or anything. So I just kept talking and asking questions. And then, now he's calling me a couple times a week, and now he's calling me daily. And it's stuck, it's stuck like that until the day he died, calling me pretty much daily. And when I went out to visit him, and that's when he gave me all the information.
Was he calling you collect?
No, he was calling me through GTL, which is like a prison phone system.
Were those calls did the prison pay for it, or did he have family to put money in an account, or?
No, I paid for all the calls.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the reason I have a San Francisco number, is so I get very cheap calls when they call me.
Right. Oh, that's right.
That's nice thinking.
Smart.
Yeah. People are always like, do you live in San Francisco? I'm like, no, it's just for the inmates to call me, so it's wicked cheap.
For the murderers.
A former member of the Behavioral Science Unit, FBI, he was a profiler. And we had a lot in common. When I was doing this Night Stalker case and people weren't believing, I was a young investigator, so I didn't have the experience that the others did. A dear friend of mine, Bill Hagmeyer, called me up. That's the guy that called me up the day we were on the golf course. Mm-hmm. And Bill Hagmeyer said, he told me years ago, he said, when these guys, he says, they'll stonewall you, they won't talk to you, they won't do shit, and then they'll bullshit you, they won't tell you the truth, and all of a sudden, they'll finally just realize, hey, there's nothing more there than to tell you the truth. They'll open up with one thing, and once they open up with the first time, then the floodgates open up, and they'll talk to you about anything you want to know.
Wow.
So that's essentially what sounds like as you're talking. Exactly. He's the first person I thought of. When he finally thought, okay, she's not going to chase me anymore, this is it. Now I'll let her in a little bit. I'll give her that phone call because I don't want to lose maybe one of the few contacts he had from the outside that had shown allegiance to him because she'd been trying for 3 years. Now I'll reach out and I'll stay with me. And then he found you to be a friend, and he opened up.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's, I got a call from this guy that wrote a book on Charles Manson. Jeff, somebody, one of the last books of that, he was already, almost toward the end of his life. And the reporter said to him, how do you spend your time now? What are you doing? And he goes, well, I listen to classic rock, he loved rock. He goes, I'm a fan of John Wayne, Frank Sinatra, and George Lopez.
There you go.
And the guy said, send it to my manager, and he goes, let George know that, I'm working on this book on Charles Manson, and that's Charles Manson, this is his quote. And I was like, Charles Manson. And then somebody said, go see him. And I said, man, are you crazy? I think my career would be over. So, I think for me, like cancel culture, I think if I had gone to, I wouldn't go, but if I had gone, you can imagine, And also years ago when Fox was doing different kind of specials on comedy, they asked me to go to, it might have been San Quentin, to go do a special in prison, and I said no because I didn't think that people who were in there deserved to be entertained. I said I couldn't do it. And Paul Rodriguez did it. Which,
oh, really?
I guess he's in his own prison.
Let me officially say thank you.
And it didn't, and nobody could believe that because it was it became a big special, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't go, and I told those, and they thought I was crazy. Like, you're turning it down. I can't go. I don't know where that came from because I didn't have a father or mother. But I just thought that, if you're in there.
I didn't. Richard told me that he would get in touch with me and he wanted to talk to me again. He says it'll probably take about 7 years of him being in custody. He wanted to talk to me about 4 more murders here in L.A. County. And Phil Carlo, the guy that wrote the book, he called me up and he says, hey, Gil, Rich wants to talk to you. My first reaction was, I said, deliver this message back to Rich. If he's going to tell me the truth and not bullshit me, I'd love to go see him. But if he's going to take me down a bullshit road, well then, no. And my thought being, because if I went up there to see him, that's like a trip to Disneyland for him.
Yeah.
He's in there. He's not in there for rehabilitation, and I'm not there to entertain him. You got something to say, this is work, it's official.
Yep.
I'm not your good buddy. This was a relationship that we had. So I didn't go see him then. And as it turned out, then I reached out to him years later. One of my guys had to go up San Quentin. I said, hey, ask Rich if he wants to see me. And they said he was all excited. Hey, you got some guys here from L.A. want to see you. And he came up to the door and they said, hi, Rich. And he said, hello. He was very friendly. And they said, hey, you remember Gil Carrillo? Wants to know if you want him to come up and see you. And he said, no, turn away and walk away from the door. So
slam.
So much, and that's when Bill Hagmeyer told me, no, you got to go. You got to go. Let him bullshit, do anything.
Yeah.
Just to keep the doors open.
Yeah, I'm talking, yeah.
You want to get them talking.
Yeah, you do.
For sure.
Yeah, I think if you get them talking, they won't stop talking.
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. And then they might want to even maybe edit themselves, but then they can't help it.
Yeah. Well, when
I was
in the
naive
cage,
one time.
there's no microphone in the cage, so they kind of they have a free reign. So you can kind of go in there and be like, talk, and they'll start talking. And you kind of let them hang themselves with their own tongue once you get in there. But it is a tightrope because you're kind of like the same way Gil is talking. It's kind of the same way I go in. It's like, I'm not going to make this trip for nothing.
Right.
I'm not walking out there empty-handed. So you've got to kind of make that stance with them. I'm not walking out of here empty-handed, and this isn't playtime. I'm going to still come see you, but you kind of got to put your foot down before you even go in, and to let them know you mean business while you're there.
And he, by this time, he really didn't need me. He had a fan club. There was people following him. He got married, and that's why he didn't want to talk to me, because I had spoken out against the marriage. Mm-hmm. And so.
But they do have. They have fans and they have devotees and all that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, Bittaker had a girlfriend the entire time I was interviewing him.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Did you talk to her?
After he died, I did.
Wow.
Reached out to her. Yeah.
And what did she have to say?
What was her take?
He was even. Well, she didn't really have much to say. She didn't really see him too much. She was over in Ireland, but he had a wife too. Right after he was arrested in '79, he actually got married for a little bit, and then they got divorced. And yeah, so I mean, these guys they get married, they have girlfriends, they have outside relationships, and it's almost something you have to work against while you're, interviewing them. It almost work against everything you want to do. Like Gil said, he had a fan club and everything, he didn't want to talk to me at that point. But, especially they have, I would say, like with Ramirez and Gil, they have that kind of this unspoken bond of the investigator and versus serial killer. Same with like Bittaker and I was investigating, going through his trial transcripts, police discovery. There's this, it's a different bond you have with them because you're, going deep into their case, and you know them better than anybody and their case better than everybody. So it actually can work for you in many ways too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shit. How far?
I'm sure Ramirez thought about you until the day he died, Gil.
Wow.
I hope in a friendly way. Yeah. Well, I still, I know he didn't hate me that bad. I had helped him out with his family, and his family was going through a rough time after his conviction. So I had friends from El Paso go and start making passes, contact the family, tell them they take care of him. They had nothing to do with what he was going through. And since then, I've run into other family members of his. Matter of fact, one that had been sexually molested for 6 years by him, and she was his niece. He was her uncle. So I still keep in touch with the family. I have no problems there. Richard's sister, this young lady, her dad was Richard's brother. Richard had a sister, and that sister just recently, because I just heard from the gal, was really pissed off because she'd done a television Tamara Hall. She did the Tamara Hall show to expose the fact that when kids tell you that they've been sexually molested, listen to them and give them the attention. Do not deny them. And that's what had happened to her in her life. Well, now the sister came at her and was condemning her. How could she go on television and say that Richard had done this? There was no need to bring it up. There was no need to do this, no need to that. And she's convinced that they gave her oodles of money. They didn't give her a nickel. But she thought she was just trying to make money off her brother. And this is after he's already dead. It was senseless. And I've even told her, if necessary, I'll go back and talk to family. Set them straight.
I mean, going through the years of these guys, and even seeing like BTK or Son of Sam, that they're enamored with each other. Like if one guy's a fan of the other, they all know of each other, and they're enamored of. Like us to say, oh, that guy knows me, like
it's their own club. Yeah. Bundy and Richard communicated together. They wrote back and forth to each other. If I'd have had any intestinal fortitude at all when they executed Bundy, I wanted to send Richard a telegram saying, "See you in hell," and sign it from Ted.
Oh my God!
But I was afraid I'd get in trouble, so I didn't.
Yeah.
But they did, and Richard was intelligent enough to just say he's got an ego that'll fill this room.
Wow.
And studied serial killers could tell you anything from the time the Romans fed the Christians to the lions, modern-day serial killers. So they did have their own group.
Also, he said that, once he got found out that they deflate because their ego's so big that.
Oh, yeah. Their egos are astronomical compared to, normal people. They have this ego that wants to be filled. And, with what you said, Gil, about the sister, one thing I found is, going through the cases of especially Bittaker and Norris, there's so many unknown victims that were not killed. But, if you watch the documentary, you see Tracy, who was the neighbor of Bittaker, and how much trauma she's still dealing with. So you see a lot of the victims that weren't necessarily killed, but still victimized by these guys.
I enjoyed it, the documentary. I think now talking to you, I think, to go back and watch it now, it's more interesting now listening to you and then watching now. If I go back and watch it, a little bit of the backstory of it.
Same thing. I watched it after I met with you, But after this, after talking today, I want to go back and watch it again.
And it's on Peacock, is that right? It's the Toolbox Killers on streaming on Peacock, right? So for our audience to check it out, please go.
And I think if there was a Nancy Drew, and if she was an old lady and they saw her and go, hey, Nancy Drew, this young lady right here, you inspired her to be this person. I think Nancy Drew
She'd be proud.
she'd be very proud of you.
She'd be proud.
Guys, that means a lot to me. I hope so.
You know,
That's my role model.
I think absolutely. I mean, those are stories, that you hear that, I mean, people tell stories every night to their kids and they read to their kids, or sometimes they don't. Like, when I was married, my wife read to Mayan, I think my American Express. No, it wasn't. And I think it does start creativity, because it's not music, it's the actual written word, and it's coming from a human voice, not a book on tape or things. And I think those things are influential to children at that, like it got into you, and like if it hadn't happened, would you have found your way to that? But it gave you something that you could hold on to, learn from, and then be an expert at, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's really, awesome, to have a role model, even if it's fictional, to look up to, where, that's inspired to be like, and she's a great role model. And I hope there's, other role models out there that kids can look up to. I'm going to be reading Romeo, the Hardy Boy, probably in a couple of years. Hopefully he looks up to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. How great is that? What a great circle that is to like be able to read him the Hardy Boys. And beautiful.
Yeah. Well, my dad was the one who read me Nancy Drew, and he always said, I created a monster. I never thought you were going to take Nancy Drew and go this far, and I'd be driving you to San Quentin one day. He was the first person who actually took me to San Quentin.
Oh, wow.
So
he had to think it had to be a trip to go back and remember his little girl, and then going and seeing that.
Right. Yeah. It was a trip for him.
Which is a great movie. I think, that there's a movie in your story in there. That's a great,
Oh, yeah. It all comes full circle.
And you have a long, you have a long future ahead of you in that.
She does.
Amazing.
And the door has been open for her. She's got a foot in that door now because of your work.
Yeah, I do. I'm so blessed and lucky. And I said to Gil, I'm hoping he, helps me out with the searches we're trying to get going for the girls and everything. And, Gil has been just amazing. Just the time we've met together, what you've taught me, and, you've been a role model for me.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to working with you. By the way, where did we meet for dinner that one night? Do you remember the name of the place?
Uh-oh.
I'm going to let George say it.
Was it Steven's Steakhouse?
Was it Steven?
Yeah, it just happened to be.
Man, that's
that's crazy.
there's the Sizzler. There's better places.
How dare you?
That's my cheers, brother.
It totally is. He does his best work in there.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible going to that booth, seeing that back booth you had, Gil, with the phone where you'd be getting those calls about the Night Stalker. Like, for me, it was iconic just to sit there in that booth.
It was a family booth. It was the only place back at the time before we had cell phones. They had a phone jack. We'd go work right there. That would be my sub office.
Oh.
Well, you didn't say that.
I've just learned an important fact here.
I'm trying to get Gil to let me in the other jail, Lincoln Heights Jail, that old retired one.
Yeah, that's LAPD's. That's LAPD's job.
I'm a little bit of a ghost hunter. Well, I don't hunt them. They're in my house. They're already there. But those things fascinate me. Like I was fascinated growing up by abandoned buildings and things like that were or houses, because I would go in there and think that people once lived in here. You know, when you go to school, you walk into school, and there's an abandoned house. Every kid goes to the abandoned house and walks through there.
Charlotte Holmes.
And I would always think of, like, who lived here, what was the story behind it. So then my daughter says to me, you know, do you ever check out YouTube? They got a lot of that stuff on there. And then from that, I don't watch any other TV other than YouTube or abandoned buildings. Or there's one that those guys go into those buildings, and there's this door that's there, and the guy, the door falls, and there's a guy back there with a knife and like a mask on. That, you know, there's a scream, and then there's a scream when a man is scared because the door dropped, and the guy's like this with a knife, and that dude is like, ah! And he's like, they run, camera run. I mean, it's.
I'm going to tell you right
you know,
now, this Mexican knows why those places are abandoned in the first place. Ain't no need to go back inside.
And so, you know, it's funny because I actually do urban exploring and paranormal investigation just as fun. It's like I just like to investigate for fun, but I do the urban exploring, which is the abandoned buildings, and the ghost hunting too.
They say all the good ones are taken.
You know, I know a good friend of yours, Momo. He does that stuff.
He's done that. He does that too.
He goes out with him and his friend Hefty, Don Hefty, and they talk about stuff like that. And I say, hey, have a nice trip. I'm not.
Momo, come and tell her the story of being at that park.
Oh, Momo's here.
Oh, what are the odds here? Momo, come grab my mic.
No, he is. This is, grab a...
Here, you can hop in right here. This way you can hear yourself and everything.
Explain to her a little bit of that. This is Momo. Laura.
We did this park in the city of Downey and around Pico too, and we had this. There's just been words of things happening in that park. A lot of just floating, a lot of orbs and pictures, more unusual than usual. So we went to do the investigation about 3 a.m. and I had a medium with me. He was named AJ Barrera, amazing medium, and he was already tracking some kind of energy by the playground. And as we're talking about this, he says, we need to leave right now. There's two guys arguing behind me. And we took a picture, and we had some great equipment. There's two gangster-looking dudes behind him, the silhouettes. And, you know, we see it right away. We kind of run out of the area. We kind of calm down. We kind of, you know, try to regroup. And then we do an EVP session. That's electric voice phenomenon, when you record, you know, ghost voices and you play them back in a higher frequency. And during that EVP session, we actually caught a little girl saying, I jump. And it's so clear that the I jump voice, we later find out that, you know, there's a few suicides there, and there's been a few murders there of little girls.
Oh my God.
Shit.
I mean, and then speaking about the abandoned buildings, we did the Alexandria Hotel, the one in downtown LA off of Spring, and we did the 7th floor, and we couldn't find anything there, but we did a little search about what was going on there, nothing, and then one day we're packing up, and AJ and I both see this young little girl walk out of the elevator, and I think that's when I stopped doing the ghost hunts for a while, because it kind of freaked me out a little bit. And after like a month of research, we found out that in 1909 the architect's daughter fell through the elevator shaft. I mean, it was just crazy, and I think Gil was on our podcast, and you know, he had his own experiences on our podcast.
This is the closest I've ever been to Momo since then. Those things.
It's funny how people have that, that they're intuitive, or, Momo. I like I've been fascinated like you are. I have. So my grandfather used to call me Encanto, which means like enchanted. But I took it as an insult because everything was an insult. So why would I not take that as an insult? And I didn't like it. I didn't like when he called me that. And Momo was in my room upstairs, and we were talking, and he said, what did you say? What is?
I just, I got a vision of a song that I remember from back in the old days. My mom used to sing, and part of it is, he says Encanto. And I even say, man, does the word Encanto mean anything to you? And it was out of the blue. It was just random. But then I think we were just we were vibing. George and I were vibing that day. We had a good creative session. And I think when you vibe with someone, you can kind of like being intuitive, anything trying to get at them or around them. And I think that's what happened that day.
But then I said to him, "Shock, why did you say that? What made you say that?" And he's like, "I don't. Why did you say that? What made you say that?" And he goes, it came into and only my grandfather and my grandmother would know that, you know. And that's,
Wow. That's
and then AJ, we have to have you talk to AJ. So AJ, I meet through Momo, and I was cleaning when the pandemic kind of started. I said, "Oh, just, I'll clean that," and I found the Bulova watch that my grandfather used to wear my whole childhood, and he used to wear the face right here on the underside, so that part of that fucker. So when I said, "Can I go play?" he would look down at his wrist, and instead of going like this, he would look down and say no. By looking at the, he wouldn't even give me the decency to do that. He put it on the underside so he could go no. He'd look at the time and go no. And I would be like, man.
That's hysterical.
So that day, I found the watch in my house. And then we talked to AJ, Momo and AJ said, "Your grandfather was he, I don't want to say he was dumb, but was he like simple?" I said, "Yeah." And he worked was he construction? I said, "Yes. He worked in construction." And then there's a little bit of pause, and he goes, "He wants me to ask you what you found today." And I'm like, there's
Holy
no way.
shit.
I said,
Wow.
yeah, I said, "I found his watch."
Give me another beer.
I mean,
George, I have a medium I should hook you up with, and she is unbelievable. I mean, the stuff she has given to me, she's worked cases with me, and I think she would blow you away with some of the stuff too.
now where did you get, and now how did that start for you? Like, how did that, what did they read? The La Llorona books to your dad? No.
Now she doesn't know who La Llorona is.
I know the whole urban legend of her.
Oh,
By the way,
there
I
you
just
go.
want to say, I know the whole urban legend. I want to say too, when you said the Alexandria, I was like, oh my God, that's on my bucket list, because that was actually one of the places Bittaker lived. He actually lived there in '79 before he moved to the Scott's Motel in Burbank, was the Alexandria. So it's been like my dream to actually go up there and investigate.
It's a lot of negative things in that whole, even on the 7th floor itself. I think Valentino, an actor, a lot of suicides, a lot of old Hollywood there. There's a lot of things roaming around. We have footage of a black, just smoke flying around in one of the kitchens. And AJ and I actually discovered an underground room that was a prohibition hold from one hotel to another. And
oh my God,
AJ discovered it just by, hey man, something's telling me we need to go lower. And we just kept on going lower till we found this hole in the bottom of an underground swimming pool that led us through another hotel. I mean,
God.
That place has a lot. Everybody who's worked there or even been there or even attended there has said that place is very unsettling, especially around, because it's the only hotel that has suicide doors still.
Wow.
what does that mean?
Those doors that you just open up and they have nothing.
Oh, shit. Oh, that's right.
Okay, I tell you what. If there's a line to get in, you can come. I'll give you butts. You can come right in front of me. I ain't going to that place.
Yes. I was in the Chicago theater, and we used to meet people that's underground, and I was talking to two people, and something touched my arm, and I turned around because I thought somebody was trying to get my attention. I thought there would be somebody there, and there wasn't anybody there. And then whenever it happens to me, I just say it. I said, something touched my arm right now, right behind me, right on the side of me. Something touched my arm. And the guy from the Chicago theater was across from me. He went, yes. They have these things in the hotel, in there. And then at a theater in Reading, Pennsylvania, I would always go to the old theaters and say as I was leaving, is this place haunted? And the guy says, shit. He goes, is so-and-so here? And he goes, no, he left. He goes, okay, so get this. He goes, this guy had gone away, came back, and there was a woman that had passed, an elderly woman who was an usher in a theater, and she had passed away, but the guy didn't know. And then he went backstage, and the guy said, where were you? And he goes, I was talking to Lydia for like the last 25 minutes. And the guy's like, who? Lydia. And he's like, hey, man, Lydia died like 6 month ago. And that guy was like, bullshit. Yeah. He goes, I just talked to her. He goes, man, listen, man. She passed. He goes, I was just in her aisle at the top. They were looking at each other, and she said she was standing like she always did, and she was filling me in on what's been going on. I said, she didn't tell you she died? He goes, no, we're just talking about.
She tell you she died?
Well, I mean, that kind of stuff is, like, I've never seen an actual, I've seen orbs in my house, but not an actual physical. I don't know what I would do if I saw that.
It looks so real. I mean, I saw one, but it didn't look like in the movies where they're see-through. You know, it just looks like it's our level, on our ground, and that's what you call either a residual haunting or you call it a grounded apparition.
We're going to get you into the Alexandria
You call
Hotel.
it a pendejada if you stay there, brother.
We're going to all go to the Alexandria Hotel.
I am so game for that. If you guys will do it.
He's not going to do it. I'll do it. I'll
be your driver.
I would love to meet your medium because I love that.
Yeah, I will hook you up with her. She's pretty incredible. I've always wanted to actually go up to the fire roads too and do a EVP session or something up there on the roads.
Yeah.
Too. Gil saw my video. I went up there in the middle of the night with a machete because I had to get like some video footage of a standpoint that Bittaker told me. He goes, you can see a 360 view of all the cars coming down this road where he took the victim. So I went up there in the middle of the night and I took the video and I showed it to Gil, and Gil thought I was crazy, that I was going to get killed up there.
I thought she was crazy. It scared me looking at it. Not because I expected something to jump out at her, but it was dark. Lighting was very poor. And I just, the angle she was shooting at, man, she's going to slip. She's going to fall.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be the last person to see her alive. You know, this video it was nerve-wracking to me.
Send that video and see if we can play it in a higher frequency, see if we pick up any VVPs off of it.
Oh, it's a great idea, actually. Yeah. That'd be cool.
I don't use this.
if you guys
resend
do
it.
one.
Resend it to me, and I'll get it to Momo.
Yeah, I will.
Well, thank you for being, I don't use this term a lot. You are a modern day marvel.
Aw. Oh my God, that means a lot coming from you. I'm such a huge fan. My family's such a huge fan too.
Thank you, but I'm not a modern marvel. You are. I save those compliments for very few people. And nobody at Steven's Steakhouse that I've ever called. But thank you for being on, and it's incredibly interesting. And now we have things to do together.
Yes, definitely.
We'll go to
the Alexandria.
And we'll go to the jail on the same day. That jail's supposed to be on it.
I'm packing that day. I'm telling you right now, I'm packing.
I didn't even know it was there. And you can imagine what I thought when I saw it. I was like, oh. Because it has the bars on top so that guys can't escape.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura.
You get some great photos there, guys.
Thank you. Our relationships are just starting. This is just the end of the podcast. We got work to do together. That'd be fun.
Yes.
Thank you, Laura.
Seriously, I'm down for it. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yes, we loved it. Thank you.
Stay in touch.
Definitely. Bye, guys.
Beautiful. Bye. Thank you. That was awesome.